Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to the Disruptive Successor Show, the place where business, innovation, and leadership intersect, especially when the next generation is at the helm of change. Today's guest is Ronald Stein, a professional engineer, energy literacy advocate, and co-author of the Pulitzer Prize-nominated book, Clean Energy Exploitations. He's a columnist for America Out Loud News and a trusted advisor to both the Heartland Institute on issues of energy policy and education. Ron founded PTS Advance along with his wife, June Stein, 30 years ago and grew the company to 100 employees. These were recruiters, and placing over 700 employees, these were contractors, in complex industries including energy, life sciences, and construction. Ron and June gave the business to their two adult children 15 years ago. With decades of experience serving technical and skilled trades, PTS Advance has become a leading staffing and workforce solutions firm specializing in staffing augmentation. Ron understands firsthand the challenges business face when navigating shifts in energy policy and labor markets. And in this episode, Ron will share his urgent message, which is we are suffering from a dangerous lack of energy literacy, especially among business leaders and policymakers. While renewable energy dominates headlines, Ron points out that wind and solar only generate electricity, and electricity doesn't make things. The very materials and products we rely on, from EVs to laptops, are rooted in petrochemicals derived from fossil fuels like oil, coal, or natural gas. So if you're trying to future-proof your business in a world where you're chasing net zero without understanding what that truly means, this conversation is going to open your eyes. I know it's already opened my eyes. Let's dive in with Ronald Stein.
Jonathan, glad to be aboard.
Yeah, fantastic. So, well, let's just get started with, for those who come for the family business show, you're going to learn a lot more about energy. Then you're going to learn about family businesses and why Ron and June transferred their business to their kids. But as you'll be able to tell, Ron is very passionate about this. You have a background as an engineer. You worked for Bechtel and Fluor, two of the largest corporations in that space. And so give us a little bit of background about that, what you did, and then how that led to being a founding principal at PTS Advance.
Surely. When I started my career, I was working at Fluor and Bechtel, did that for 20 years, basically designing and building refineries around the world. So I learned the industry minutely, and after 20 years, I had an opportunity to start PTS because Fluor and Bechtel provide staff augmentation to refineries, because refineries go through turnarounds where they basically decide, certain equipment needs to be adjusted, changed, modified. And so they'll basically shut down the refinery for like a month and do all this major work while the refinery is out of service. and then put it back online. And so to do that, they require additional people to design all that stuff, buy the equipment and change the equipment. And I found that opportunities since Fluor and Bechtel have high billing rates. And I could start a staffing company because I know the industry, I knew the people, and I could provide the staffing augmentation at half the billing rates of the big guys. And so we tried that, and we started with Unocal in Southern California, and it worked very successful. And we parlayed Shell and Chevron and et cetera, et cetera. And so over the years, over the 30 years, we became one of the largest staffing firms in the energy sector, staffing supplemental staff augmentation to their core staff nationwide. And it's been a blessing for the industry. And after about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when we gave the businesses to our sons, Russell, who's a CPA, and David, who's a tech guru, they basically took it over, and it allowed me to focus 100% of my time authoring books and articles on energy literacy. And one of the books, as you mentioned, was Clean Energy Exploitations, which was nominated for Pulitzer Prize. And I'm a columnist on America Out Loud News, so my articles go out every Monday and get reposted around the world and probably get exposed to 500,000 people around the world. And I co-author a lot of the articles with people around the world, from South Africa, Australia, Germany. And the biggest passion I have is to stimulate conversations about energy literacy, because most of our policymakers are misunderstanding the word energy. They keep talking about wind and solar energy as going to replace fossil fuel energy. But Jonathan, wind and solar does something totally different than fossil fuels. Wind and solar only generates electricity. They make no towers, no insulation, no asphalt, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas oil, all the products we have today didn't exist 200 years ago. And we have like more than 6,000 products. Here in California, Governor Newsom is trying to mandate the transition to EVs, thinking that's going to get rid of oil. But the EV is 100% made with oil, from the tires, the wires, the insulation, the computers. And he's focusing on getting rid of gasoline. I figure that's going to solve the emissions problem.
Isn't there an argument to be made that it's just reduce our foreign dependence on oil?
Well, I'll get to that in a second, because he wants to
back up also just before we go forward. So, you had the knowledge from your prior corporate experiences of what those companies needed, and you had to transfer that knowledge to the next generation of your kids, and also all the employees that you hired to do this recruiting. Was that challenging, by the way? Just because knowledge transfer in businesses, sometimes it takes decades of hanging around and understanding the business. Was that challenging?
Well, our sons, like I say, they grew up while I was, started my career at Fluor and Bechtel, and did a lot of traveling around the world. And through, I guess, osmosis, constant exposure to me, the industry, the people, they basically learned it with 8 hours a day, quote, at the workplace, and even in the house. So this constant exposure, they became more and more familiar with it, and understood it. And so, yeah, it was just a natural transition of that education effort. Then they're not engineers. Russell's a CPA, and David's a IT guru. But yeah, they both learned the industry from constant exposure to the people and the talent.
And then tell us a little bit about the expansion of the business. You, first of all, you expanded obviously beyond just those core industries. You got into other industries, but
Exactly.
You also brought in an outsider, a non-family executive, as the CEO. That was also a turning point decision, wasn't it?
It was. It was about 15 years ago that NES, which was a firm based in the UK, wanted to buy us, and they made a couple efforts, and it failed. And It was like almost an 18-month period. We worked with NDS, and finally they made us an offer, and we basically accepted it. And we had signed all the papers to sell the business to them. And at the 11th hour, one of the board members didn't like one of the terms in one of our contracts we had with one of the refineries. He walked away. And during that 18-month process, we've been working with one of their VPs, Dane Gronfeld, and who worked out of the UK, but he lived in St. Clemente because he was a surfer. And he got so, technical term, pissed off that they walked away because he's been involved in a lot of mergers and acquisitions, that this was the cleanest one he's ever seen. He got so ticked, he resigned.
Wow.
And so Russell and David had grown to understand the business and were pretty much running it anyhow. And I wanted to get involved with 100% of my time authoring articles to be the private business spokesperson for the industry to provide energy literacy to the world and stimulate conversations. So I suggested to Russell and David that we offered Dane a position as CEO at PTS. And we offered it to Dane, and he accepted it. And we had an 18-month opportunity to interview the guy when they were trying to buy us.
Right.
And so it was a natural. We've been working with the guy for a year and a half. And when he came on board, that was very instrumental because in his international exposure, he brought a lot of companies into PTS that we wound up buying and acquiring. And so with the addition of him, we basically grew to like 150 people internal staff. And we have offices in San Diego, Houston, Orlando, Cleveland. And it was a major, major move. And so while they were doing that, I was spending all my time authoring energy literacy articles.
Yeah.
And so, it was.
Why those locations, Ron? Something particular about, I can see Houston, oil.
Well, Houston oil, and same thing with Florida, because one of the companies we acquired was basically based in Orlando. So that became an office for us. San Diego, we use Smart Search for our database of resumes. They're based out of San Diego. So we had an office down there. And the same thing in Cleveland. They're part of our research talent. So it was just a natural growth. And the more we grew, the more pressure was on me to provide energy leadership in the world. And so I really focus on my passion is to stimulate conversations.
And so your remaining role at this point with PTS Advance is as a chairman or a board member? Or?
Well, I was the founder along with my wife, but it was just about a couple of weeks ago we consummated a sale of the PTS Advance to a different firm in the UK, Morrison. So Morrison has acquired PTS, and I was an employee of PTS Advance when we owned it, but I was terminated when Morrison took over. But I'm still continuing my effort to stimulate conversations on energy literacy.
All right, well, let's get into that. You talk about energy literacy. I guess you've already maybe described what it means and why it's so important for business leaders today, but let's pick the conversation back up there. And also let me add to that, who else do you see in industry, organizations, governmental or non-governmental organizations that are talking a lot about energy literacy? So,
well, Jonathan, I see that all over the world because energy literacy is becoming, I think, more prevalent around the world. I see a lot of, wind and solar projects being terminated because, they don't exist unless they're subsidized. And the challenge is, the world populated from 1 to 8 billion people. It wasn't because of oil, it was because of the products. I remember I was interviewed on a New York TV station a couple months ago, and the first question to me was, "Hey, Ron, we understand you're pro-oil." I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not pro-oil. I'm pro the products we get from oil.
right.
There's another way to generate the products. I'm all for it. But today we have more than 6,000 products that come from oil that makes our iPhones, our defibrillators, everything. We have 6 ways to generate electricity, and people don't understand electricity came after oil. Let me repeat that, came after oil, because we can generate electricity with wind and solar, hydro, nuclear, coal, natural gas. But all 6 ways to generate electricity have the same components. They got wires and insulation, computers and upholstery, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all made with fossil fuels. So if you get rid of oil, you get rid of electricity. You get rid of EVs. The EVs are 100% made with oil. Because all the solutions are coming up with is more demand on oil. There's a formula called supply and demand. And here in California, Governor Newsom is focusing only on eliminating the supply. Oil production is basically in a terminal status. 50 years ago, we were pretty much independent, meeting California demands. We had 95% dependency was based here in California. Since that time, in 50 years, instead of being 5% dependent on foreign imports for crude oil, we're now more than 70% dependent on foreign imports for crude oil to run the in-state refineries. And that is a national security risk for America, since really important.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, how did that happen, or at what point in time did that happen? I mean, I grew up in my first growing up in California was as a university student at Santa Barbara, which was known for its environmental programs and research, and there were oil wells right off the coastline there, as I'm sure you know.
Right.
And Occidental Petroleum was further down the coast in Malibu. I don't know if those oil wells are still pumping. Of course, when you get off the airport in LA and drive into Beverly Hills, you drive right through an oil field where they're pumping oil. I mean, are those things still in operation?
And what less? Like I say, oil production in California is going downhill because the regulations, the setbacks, you can't get a permit to modify these things or put them in. So yeah, California has been beating up on oil production, which is a supply, and they've also overregulated the refineries. And refineries are in business to make money. In fact, we've gotten to the point that 2 refineries in California have announced they're closing. Phillips in Southern California and Valero in Northern California. And the challenge is that California manufactures all their transportation fuels in state because we're an island, energy island. We're totally isolated from the other 49 states by the Sierra Mountains. There's no pipelines over the Sierra Mountains. So we generate all that aviation fuel, all the transportation fuels in California. And just identifying one, California's a big state. We got like 145 airports, but of that, 9 of them accept international flights. 41 are military airports, and we're consuming 13 million gallons of aviation fuel every day.
Wow.
All made in state. 2 refineries are closing, so we're not going to be able to make that aviation fuel in state. But the good news is there's 8 new refineries coming on board in the next couple of years. The bad news, Jonathan, is those refineries are located in China. So China is going to be providing the aviation fuel to run California.
And why are these 2 big ones closing? It's not for lack of demand. It's for regulations or the cost of doing business, or
they're corporations. They're corporations, trying to make a profit, and they can make a better profit in another state. So less regulations in there.
The cost of installing and setting those up must
be billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Yes.
Still makes sense for them to relocate and not just continue to operate.
Exactly.
Wow. But they're just processing plants. Is that right?
Yes. Right. They're basically manufacturing plants because they manufacture the transportation fuels and all the oil derivatives that makes the 6,000 products in our daily lives. Because when you take a look at your workplace, the hospital, the airport, try to identify one thing, just one thing that was not made from those oil derivatives. Because wind and solar is only generating electricity.
unpack that for listeners? Because I don't think people look at those things and think, oh, that was made from oil.
Right.
Was it just the oil in a machine that ran the machine that made it, or?
No, the oil was made the machine, the parts, the components, everything. Before the 1800s, we just had wood, and people to make products. But no, the earpods, the iPhone, electricity can charge it, but electricity cannot make it. And that's really what we get down to. And the confusion among the policymakers is the use of the word energy, because they keep talking about wind and solar energy as we replace fossil fuels. Well, Jonathan, they do different things. Wind and solar only generates electricity, where the fossil fuels is the basis of the 6,000 products in our daily lives, because we're a materialistic society. I would love to get rid of oil. Let's no backup plan.
Right. Well, that's the big discussion. And certainly our president is talking about, drill, baby, drill was part of his campaign speech.
Right.
Is it about drilling more, or is it about keeping these refineries? How do we get more oil other than drill?
Well, it's both, because you got to drill for the oil, and the oil is basically input to the refineries, because crude oil by itself is useless. It's black tar.
Right.
But if you can throw it through a refinery and they heat it, they beat it, and they crack it, and they do all these crazy things to it, then you get usable products that we have today. And like I say, all the infrastructures we have, from communications, airlines, ships, it's all made with fossil fuels. Today we got 50,000 merchant ships. We got 20,000 aircraft. It's crazy. I mean, when I fly or take a cruise, I take a step back and I look at that airplane and say, "Wow, you want to get this off the ground?"
Yeah, right. That's pretty big.
And all the pieces and parts, your luggage, it's all made from fossil fuels.
Interesting, because I think of an airplane as metal and electronic components.
But the metal is basically, go back to automobiles made with robotics. I mean, the robots are made with fossil fuels, all the components. So it's like I say, wind and solar makes nothing.
But I think that's where we have trouble wrapping our heads around that.
Yes.
Right. I was exposed to this kind of thinking just a couple of years ago, watching the television series Landman with Billy Bob Thornton, where she's like a Mercedes driving, jet setting young hot lawyer out into the oil fields, and he explains to her every single thing that's made from oil, including the lipstick that she's putting on her face, and the car that she's driving. And I think she just did a double take, and I mean, it was one of the great lines in television, I thought, where he just spewed all these different, plastics and things that you deal with every day. And
I keep saying that the greatest thing in California, the greatest thing about getting rid of oil is Governor Newsom won't have any grease to comb his hair.
Okay. Right. And we know Donald Trump doesn't use grease in his hair. So we've been greenwashed is kind of what partly the message I'm hearing you say. We've been pushed into policies and programs that encourage, sustainable, so to speak, a sustainable energy policy, and one that's good for the environment. And I mean, that seems hard to argue with. But
sustainable energy policy really should be sustainable electricity policy. And we keep talking about the energy transition. It's really electricity transition.
Right.
You want to, instead of generating electricity from coal and natural gas, you want to do it wind and solar. But it all comes down to oil. Without oil, you have no electricity. And our materialistic society is 100% a product. In California, with Newsom's mandate to buy EVs, he's only getting rid of gasoline.
Right.
He's not concerned about the other 5,999 products that the materialistic society lives on.
Right.
And there's no transition to make those.
That go on our roofs. Because, now California has mandated solar panels on the roofs of all new construction since,
Right.
I think, since 2020.
Mhm.
So those photovoltaic panels are made in a plant that require, a lot of, you're saying that's made from oil. A lot of it.
Exactly. And all the materials to make the panels or to make the wind turbines or to make the EV batteries is major mining equipment. The equipment is made with fossil fuels. It's probably driven by diesel fuel to operate, and it's just amazing. We really got to focus on being more efficient, and just because we have oil, we don't want to use it just to throw it away. We want it to last forever. The world's been around for billions of years, and we're going to run out sooner or later. Is it 100 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years? Who knows? But our billion-year-old planet's going to be around here with or without us. And so we want to focus on conservation and efficiencies and try and live our lifestyle as best we can without extracting these natural resources, because the natural resources have limitations.
Right.
We got lithium and cobalt primary used in EV batteries. Well, lithium is a natural resource. We're going to run out of that soon, be it 50, 100, 200 years. And the same thing with oil. So we want to be focused on efficiency and conservation and stop just trashing it because we have to trash it.
So you've written this book. You're a writer and a consultant, I guess, for the Heartland Institute, an advisor.
Yes, energy literacy consultant.
And so I guess the big question is, always with how you make change in society is, how do you influence the policymakers and get them more educated? You can't do it as a one-man person. Are there organizations like Union of Concerned Scientists type of an organization, a quasi-governmental or nonprofit that is really making a push to do this?
Well, Jonathan, the rewarding thing is I'm seeing more and more people like myself writing articles all around the world. And I'm connected to, a bunch of those people. And there's more and more people raising the flag that there's got to be some energy literacy. Because most of the time you read an article and you read about energy transition, that energy really should be in electricity. We're trying to transition electricity away from coal to wind and solar. But again, electricity is not the solution to basically provide the 6,000 products that are driving our materialistic life.
Right. And so how does this affect the supply chains in the world right now? I imagine we're importing a lot of oil and we're importing a lot of products made overseas.
Exactly.
That are, so there's a downstream effect on small and mid-sized businesses, especially those in maybe construction, manufacturing, transportation.
It's very expensive because the transition to wind and solar electricity, especially here in California, we now have in California the highest cost of electricity in the country. And as you know, we have the highest cost of fuel in the country.
Right.
Because all those regulations are just passed on to the user when they fill up the gas tank. So it's really tough on businesses. And I see the middle class in California starting to disappear. See, the upper class can afford to live here because we have a nice temperate climate. But I see all these small businesses that are just suffering because the cost of electricity goes up. And well, let's talk about electricity. If Newsom is successful in transitioning people to buy EVs, California's a big state. We have 400,000 miles of roadway throughout the whole state. And the gas taxes, we're paying highest prices for gas taxes. That's raising almost $9 billion that is used to maintain those 400,000 miles of roadway. Well, Newsom wants to get rid of the gasoline by going to EVs. Well, if you get rid of the gasoline, you're going to start reducing that $9 billion that's maintaining the roads. And in its place, he's putting heavier vehicles on the road. Those EVs are much more heavy than internal combustion cars. So you got heavier vehicles tearing up the road. And, where are the funds going to come from to maintain the roads? Well, electric rates are going sky high now. They're going to go out ballistic because electric rates are going to be the ones that providing the funds to maintain those 4,000 miles of roadway. So it's crazy. I mean, there's no conversation about that. He wants to transition away from gasoline, but how is he going to replace that $9 billion if he does that?
Right, but it can't be a single person, a governor or a Ron Stein that's going to do this. It's got to be it's that concept of a tipping point where enough people are talking about this and are concerned about it, that change will really start to happen because people will be more educated, more literate. So somehow
that's why my focus is to stimulate conversations.
Yeah.
Because, if Newsom says we're going to jump off a bridge without a parachute, I say, I'm not. Let's talk about it. What are the options? No, to have it government mandated without thinking about the repercussions. It's great that we're eliminating oil production in California, but the result is, we could drill for oil here in California, the most environmentally protected location in the world, and provide jobs, save the environment. But he's all in favor of importing oil from foreign countries that have no environmental controls and no labor controls. And we're basically bringing that oil in on oil transporters that are polluting the world with their emissions. But that's okay. He's cleaning up California.
Well, so in industry, the terminology I think that's most popular is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And those are, today, if you are on a trading platform for buying your stocks, you can see what the ESG rating is of the individual companies. There actually is, organizations that are rating these things. And so there's a push for leaders to meet ESG goals, right? Nobody wants to be known as a big polluter or as, and they want to be known for their good stewardship of the planet. They get more brownie points, if you will. People buy their products because they think it's more sustainable. So, how do we navigate the realities of energy use without falling for oversimplified solutions or things that people aren't paying attention to? Like maybe ESG is not paid attention to by people outside of industry.
Jonathan, my passion is to stimulate conversations. In all my articles, because I'll do one or two podcasts a week, and the articles that come out on a Monday is usually the basis of asking the questions to have a conversation. And yeah, it's just a logical conversation because, my concern is, there's 8 billion people on this planet, but 80% of them, and that's more than 6 billion people, they're living on less than $10 a day.
Yeah.
And all you read about is the wealthy countries that can afford to subsidize wind and solar for electricity. But these people making less than $10 a day, they can't subsidize themselves out of a paper bag. I'd like to bring them into the industrial revolution, get them sanitation, electronics, et cetera, that we just take for granted. But no, there's a big separation of the wealthy countries and the developing countries. And the wealthy countries get all the press.
Yeah, I'm sure. Ron, do you get the chance to talk to business owners who want that sustainability with operational and economics? And are you able to impact change with them on a small scale even?
Well, I'm trying to impact a better understanding. I mean, you just can't take it for granted that we're going to do this. because the result of doing that, what's the repercussions? Because like with Newsom, why do you want to get rid of oil and basically have our 41 military airports and our 9 international airports basically being run by China? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
No. And do you think that China doesn't care about, I mean, for many years, they had a reputation for having really dirty air and for not really caring about that. And
They still do.
yeah,
I mean, they're building a coal-fired power plant like once a week, and it's a huge country. And yeah, like I said, they're savoring the opportunity. They're just licking their lips, watching California, because we'll be dependent on them.
interesting. All right, so tell us a little bit more about your book, Clean Energy Exploitations. When did you
Yeah, the
write it?
book.
You know,
I think it was in 22. We have it basically provides an explanation that the understanding of environmental and humanity abuses that are supporting, clean energy, because all the foreign countries like China and Africa, China has total control of all the exotic minerals and metals throughout the world. Some are mined in China, some are mined in other countries, but China's got total control of that. And the environmental degradation is atrocious, and the humanity atrocities is atrocious. And that's really what this book brings about, is to have an understanding, because my concern is, we have California mandating EVs. Well, mandating EVs is a way of financially encouraging China and Africa continue exploiting the people that have yellow, brown, and black skin, continually environmental degradation on your land. We're going great in California.
right.
And I think it's unethical and immoral to provide those financial incentives for those countries to continue doing this. In fact, when people ask me if I would buy an EV, I said no. And they ask me why. I say for ethical and moral reasons. They say, well, what the hell do you mean by that? And I talk about the book, because I'm not willing to financially encourage China and Africa to continue the exploitation of the people with yellow, brown, and black skin. We were talking about kids 6 years old mining for the stuff by hand. I mean, that's atrocious. Trump wants to build everything in America. Well, in a way that's possible, but if you build it in America, it's going to be much more expensive. There's lithium here in the United States, but we have environmental laws, we have labor laws, we have minimum wage requirements. So the amount of lithium to build that EV battery is still there, but the cost of that lithium is going to be very, very expensive. And the one thing you can't do today is increase the cost of EVs. They're already too expensive. And so, yeah, we can build it here in America, but who can afford it?
Yeah. Well, you are on a mission, my friend. And, a lot of business owners who have missions oftentimes have a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. Do you have one in your lifetime? What you hope to accomplish, or the?
I guess really what it's really coming down to is, wind and solar, I think is extracting a lot of materials out of planet Earth, the natural resources. And I see it happening today. There's a worldwide movement toward nuclear, because we want affordable, reliable, continuous electricity, also emissions-free electricity. And nuclear is providing that. Nuclear is basically accelerating around the world. The Navy's got a 70-year track record. All their aircraft carriers and submarines are basically nuclear powered. France is very much into nuclear. South Africa is going to SMRs, the small modular reactors, to serve smaller communities. So if we can get electricity to those 8 billion people, that would be fantastic. And I see that being the movement. We'll be using less soil to make wind and solar and et cetera, et cetera. So if we can focus on efficiencies, conservation, and getting the affordable electricity and serve the 8 billion, that would be fantastic. And I see that happening. It's happening around the world, around the United States, not here in California. we're, we're still trying to close our two nuclear power plants. Well, one's already closed and one's about to be closed. And but yeah, I would really like to have them reconsider, and they may.
Interesting. And how is the current political environment either working with you or, supporting you or working against what you're trying to do?
I think the political environment is turning toward energy conservation. I mean, energy efficiency and or energy literacy. Newsom is trying to Trump-proof California, but Trump, I think, does understand it. In fact, he's promoting nuclear. That was one of my recent articles. In fact, he's promoting nuclear to be developed to meet everything we've been talking about. And, we want to drill for it here instead of drilling for it over there. You create jobs, you're saving the environment because we have environmental controls and everything else. So drilling it in the United States would be the most cost-effective thing for Americans, and it would eliminate the national security risk that California is imposing on the country.
And so, actually, how do they get nuclear energy? What's the process?
Well, fission is the most available right now, and fusion is probably in the future. Fusion is how the sun develops its energy. We haven't developed that on a scale that we can do it on planet Earth yet. So, but yeah, the amount of natural resources is very limited. In fact, a lot of the nuclear waste that they refer to, today's fast breeder reactors utilize that quote nuclear waste because there's still about 90% of the energy left in it.
Mm.
And so they can use that as the fuel for generating affordable electricity, because you got to keep electricity rates low, because when electricity rates go up, everything goes up. Cost of burgers goes up, the rents goes up, and it just accelerates throughout the community.
What are the natural resources or materials that go into making nuclear energy?
I didn't know that offhand. I'd have to look at my articles or talk to my nuclear experts that I co-author articles with.
So, but this would be a 180-degree turn, am I right? From what was going on in the 80s when youth were demonstrating to shut down nuclear reactors all over the country.
Right.
So this would be a 180-degree turn. This would be getting those nuclear reactors back online or building more of them.
Well, like you say, it's probably the safest way to generate electricity. Wind and solar. A lot of the wind projects are being turned down because they're killing eagles.
Right.
And we want it to be market driven. If you're market driven, you're going to get, and technology has changed tremendously. And so, like you say, the Navy's got a 70-year track record. France is, I think, 80% electricity is coming from nuclear. And you're seeing, I think, I'm not sure of the numbers, but there's like 50 nuclear projects being developed around the world. It's just amazing that's going to be the source of electricity.
Well, Ron, thanks for spending this hour with me. You certainly educated me. I want people to know that they can pick up a copy of your Clean Energy Exploitations, I assume, on Amazon.
Yes.
Again, a Pulitzer Prize-nominated book. They could reach you if they want by email at Ronald Stein.
Ronald Stein, energyliteracy.net.
Yep. And PTS Advance, which was originally Principal Technical Services.
Right. We used the PTS to make PTS Advance. Principal Technical Service was too long. So,
built quite a business there. Very impressive. Love what you did with passing the torch on to your kids, or the baton, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
Going off and finding your next chapter that you're so passionate about.
Fantastic. I like I say, I'm trying to stimulate other people, and I'm getting a lot of other people to join me, and that's encouraging. And I think a lot of the articles that I produce is going to be part of the debate conversations when we have a next president coming up, is there'll be some energy literacy questions raised and put them on the hot seat.
Great. Ron, thanks for being on the show. Folks, if you got some good value from this, pick up a copy of Ron's book. Send us an email. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Comment, like, and share this episode with friends or family, loved ones. You'll find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other popular places. Thanks for staying tuned.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session.
Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.